Hi, Bob Denny here. Today we're going to do the TACAN Y runway 29er at North Island Naval Air Station in the Black Hawk. And we'll be using a civilian navigation system, the Garmin GTN-750Xi. This is obviously ridiculous in the real world, but I wanted to show how this nav system works well with the Black Hawk's AFCS. This is a fairly challenging approach with a DME ARC and TACAN guidance. I'll put a link to the approach plate in the comments for this video, so you probably ought to get that and at least have it on hand and print it out. Okay, let's get into it. We're going to just fly straight out to skate the initial approach fix and climb to 3,000. Okay, we're above 50 knots. We're just overflying the TACAN beacon right now. Let's go ahead and couple up for heading and airspeed. I use airspeed, which turns the collective into an altitude lever. We've got it set up, and so we'll switch over to FMS now and let the GPS fly us out to skate while we climb. You may notice the glide slope light is on. I think this is an error in the current version of the helicopter, which is still in development. We have the UH-60's Nav1 receiver set to the North Island TACAN channel 117X. Nav2 is tuned to Mission Bay. Also pay attention to the two GTN-750s, the map on top and the flight plan on the bottom. I've assumed that you know how to use the GTN-750, but you might be surprised at how well it does an arc approach, and it drives the AFCS and the Black Hawk just perfectly. My technique is to use IAS hold, which turns the collective into an elevator handle. We've just reached 3,000 feet, so I engage altitude hold, and we'll run most of this at that altitude. And of course, we are tracking outbound on that 208 radial towards skate. Another thing to observe is the two bearing pointers in the nav display. I love bearing pointers. The green one shows the North Island TACAN at our 6 o'clock, and the cyan one shows the Mission Bay VORTAC at our 5 o'clock. Okay, I hope you've got your situational awareness. I'm going to stop talking now and just let you watch how things go. Well, with an occasional comment. You can probably guess this approach was designed for a much faster aircraft, so doing this in a helo, it's pretty strange, but anyway, it shows how the UH-60 works with the GTN, so there you have it.
just passing Obime at 9 DME. That's the fix where, when we come back, we'll start the arc. We still have to get up to skate to do the reverse, though. Alright, we're approaching skate. The GTN cannot fly that teardrop reverse through the autopilot and the AFCS. So we're going to switch to heading mode and use the heading bug to fly that. And here we go. I've also slowed the ship down to 110 knots for the reverse. I'm using the Octavi IFR-1 integrated with the Blackhawk so I can use that knob for heading. The GTN's autopilot expects us to make 2-minute turns, and the autopilot AFCS in the Blackhawk does just that. So as soon as we start turning the heading bug, it's going to follow the expected curve just right. Even cooler, the GTN calculates the turn to the inbound such that at that standard rate, it comes right out on the center line. No need to come back in and intercept. It just does it perfectly. This is pretty neat. And you may have noticed the flight plan just sequenced.
And watch the HSI as the intercept comes out just right. We're on the inbound leg now, back towards skate. Next, fix Obime where we start the arc. And here's where the magic happens. When we get to Obime, the autopilot will turn into the arc, and it will also switch the HSI's course selector to turn into a left-right indicator so that we can follow the arc with that. Have a look at this. Okay, we're on the arc and the AFCS is flying us around the arc. Look at the bearing pointer, the green one. I've turned off the other one. It's now pointing to North Island, off to our left. It will stay at 90 degrees as we fly around the arc, of course. And what we're looking for is 9 miles and 90 degrees. Well, 90 and a skosh, actually. It should be just a little bit ahead of left. And now we've reached Okabe on the 178 radio of North Island. This is the first fix on the missed approach procedure, and the bearing pointer shows we're just passing that radio.
vertical track.
Okay, we're getting close to Orpu, the turn to final. We're at 3,000 feet. We need to get down to 1,900 feet. So the first thing I'm going to do is take it out of altitude hold and go back to airspeed hold. This is my elevator lever. Let's have a look at the start of our turn, and then I'm going to switch to 110 airspeed hold, and it'll continue in the turn. Now, once we roll out on the final approach, as we get closer to the final approach fix, I will switch over to TACAN. We're just 3 miles outside the final approach fix. We're going to change our nav source. So the first thing we'll do is synchronize and set heading mode, and then we can take care of setting the nav source over from FMS to TACAN. There we go. And engage nav on the AFCS. Okay, we're all set for the final approach course. We're a mile from Orti, the final approach fix. We're at the right altitude. Let's run our landing checks, and we'll be all set for the final phase. Passing the final approach fix, let's start down. A reminder that I'm using the collective as my elevator lever. That's how IAS hold works. It's pretty nice. So I set up a nice descent. I can watch the bottom of descent arc on the GTN, and our minimums are 520. Observing the radar altimeter and the baro altimeter, it's apparent to me that I made a mistake and failed to set the baro altimeter reading for the field. So I'm going to complete the approach to 494 radar altitude and ignore the baro altimeter. And I'm going to hand fly the rest of this. So drop the autopilot. And start to slow the ship down. Minimums, field in sight. Time to go ahead over and land at the helipad. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave some comments. Bye-bye.